Perfect. So we are recording. So I will get us going. Welcome everybody. We've had a lot of Rush West and Rush Wisconsin players on the call. Welcome to anybody who's not from Rush West or Rush Wisconsin. I think we've maybe had some Chicago players and some players from the Madison area, but not in the club. Welcome. We are happy to have you here. So I'm Matt Tebow. This is the fifth show that we've done, Coaches Chat. All of them are awesome. This one should be a lot of fun. I just looked through. I think everybody's muted. Obviously, you guys don't have to mute yourselves. Just want to make sure that all the listeners are, and they are. Thank you, everybody, for doing that right away. We have Derek, Coach Q, Ryan Quamme, Coach Ben John. I don't really say much about you because I give you the first part to introduce yourself. So I think that's much easier to do because you can talk about yourself and all your accomplishments in your school. So we have Kyle on here as well. Kyle, if you got in after we were talking about Kyle, any questions can be answered in the upper right corner. There's like a little conversation bubble, and you can type anything in there, and Kyle can answer us at the end. So feel free to share questions in there. Kyle's got some good curveballs if you don't have a question. They've been really, really good. So I will rotate the questioning between you guys. So what I'll do is I'll ask a question. Q, I'll start with you. And for number one, we won't go into it yet, but then Derek will end, and then I'll start with Derek, and then we'll kind of just go through that way. But this should be really easy. I'm sure that you guys, since we all know each other really well, we'll just it'll turn into more of a conversation, which is great. Perfect. So Q, let's start with you. Ben, if you want to add anything at the end of Q's, that I think that will be appropriate time for you to hop in. So Q, I sent you the questions, but I'll just go over the ones that what I'd like you to hit. So tell us a bit about yourself first before you hop into your school. Then when you hit your school, strongest programs, size, location, where do your players primarily come from, accomplishments in your program, that kind of stuff.
Perfect. Thanks, Matt, and thanks to Rush and for having us. Looking forward to it. My name is Ryan Quamme. I'm the head women's soccer coach and director of soccer operations at University of Wisconsin Whitewater. I'll be going into my 13th season this fall. My first 4 years, I was men's and women's assistant coach, and then since 2012, I've been the head women's coach, as I mentioned earlier. University of Wisconsin Whitewater is located southeastern Wisconsin. It's kind of right. We draw a triangle between Madison, Milwaukee, and Chicago. We kind of sit. So majority of our student athletes come from those surrounding areas. We do have a few from northern Wisconsin or into other states besides Illinois. But for the most part, our team is about 50% Wisconsin and about 50% out of state, most of the majority of those being in the state of Illinois. So I began as coaching actually in Rush before it was called Rush. Spent about 10 or 11 years there. We've had the privilege of working with both Coach Helmer and Coach Ben John during that time, and now have been on our staff. So it's always good to come back kind of full circle and have this conversation. So I'm looking forward to it. University of Wisconsin Whitewater is about 12,000 students, medium-sized campus, an hour to Milwaukee, an hour to Madison, an hour to the north suburbs of Chicago. So it can be traditional medium-sized campus. It can be as big as you want it to be. And it can feel as small as you want it to be as well. As far as Warhawk soccer goes, we've had some great success over the years. We've been in the NCAA tournament 8 of the last 9 years. This past season, we won our conference championship and conference tournament championship. It's the 4th time in 6 years we've won the WIC double. So we're very proud of that accomplishment as well. So we've had a lot of success. We've been fortunate. A couple Sweet 16s, one Elite 8 in our program, and we're excited. We were pretty young last year. I think we kind of overachieved a little bit, but now we got some experience. So we're excited for the fall season that we're hopefully going to have to build on last year. So
awesome. And part of that young roster is a couple of Rush girls.
Correct. Yeah. We've always had players, student athletes that have impacted us quite a bit. So, and majors, real quick, Matt, before I forget, majority of our athletes fall into our business program is probably the program we're most well known for. Education, and then our sciences. A lot of our athletes are in pre-med, pharmacy, so
awesome.
Science majors as well. So thanks again.
Awesome. Yeah. This is going to be a lot of fun. So Derek, let's dive into who is Derek Helmer?
Great. Thanks again for having me out today. Happy to be here. Like you, I have a great history with Rush as well. Coached for many years in the club on the girls' side, so happy to be back as well. So my name is Derek Helmer, and I'm the head women's soccer coach at Edgewood College. Edgewood is a small private liberal arts college. We are located in downtown Madison, right on Lake Wingra. Small class sizes. Average class size, I think, is about 14 students. We have a great collaboration program with UW-Madison where our students can actually take a class every semester at UW-Madison. So it's a small setting, yet we're in a big city with pretty much everything that you can think of going on in a great city like Madison. By far, our biggest major is nursing. It helps when we have 3 major hospitals in probably a 1-mile radius to campus. Right. Definitely helps. I'd say about 1/3 of our roster is made up of nursing students, so that's usually the case. Also, business, psychology, education are close behind there. I think we have a little over 60 different majors. So for a small school, I think we do a good job of offering a wide array of programs. This will be my 2nd season as the head women's coach. Prior to that, I was the head men's coach. So I changed this past year over to the women's side. It's something that I always was hoping to make it back over to the women's side. Coached club on the women's side with Rush for a long time. So I'm really happy to be back on the women's side. I think I covered everything.
Yeah. Did you say where your players normally come from?
Yeah. No, I didn't. So I would say primarily they come from a 90-mile radius. We have a large percentage, probably even from Dane County. I think over 90% of Edgewood students are from Wisconsin. So really heavily Wisconsin-based, but we've had players from Illinois, Iowa, Minnesota, but pretty heavily Wisconsin-based and certainly close to Madison.
Awesome. And you got a few Rush girls in your roster as well.
Yeah, we do. Yeah. We're excited for the returning ones, and we have some incoming Rush girls as well. So we couldn't be happier.
Yeah, great. Yeah, we couldn't be happier to send them to you guys. Okay, so I'm gonna just keep with you before we bounce over to Quamme. So this is weird for me. So we have a triple threat coach with Ben John here. Ben, so why don't you feel free to hop in when you want to add anything, or is that cool? Do it that way.
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay.
Ben's never been shy about that, so I think.
Yeah, Ben. Hey, can you just do a quick introduction, Ben, in case people don't know who you are, in case there's somebody on the call?
Yeah, most people kind of know who I am, the technical director at Rush, but I have a special connection to both these guys because even though I'm twice their age, in terms of soccer-wise and coaching, I came to Madison in 2001, and both these guys were part of Yahara and did a lot to welcome me into the community and get me into the club and get assimilated into the club. So I have a special connection to both of them. And I have a special connection to both schools because in 2003, I was assisting Tim on the girls' side, on the women's side, and now assisting Coach Q. So it's been fantastic. My wife worked at Edgewood and now works at Whitewater. So this is really, really special. The one thing I think you'll find as you go through today with the series, certainly, but certainly you'll see that today. I couldn't be prouder of both these guys for their journey in coaching, from club soccer to college soccer and a bunch of years in there. And one of the things as you think about schools is you think about the relationship you're going to have with a coach. One of the things that I think Matt can certainly attest to is the quality and character of the people that are coaching in college soccer we've had some great ones on, and we have 2 great ones today. So I'm excited for everyone to get to know them a little bit better, even as I sort of, kind of hang out and observe and enjoy.
Awesome. Cool, Derek. Let's hop in with you. We'll get right into it. So I like this one because it's a bit different because we've gotten some different answers. So what is your preferred way of players to connect with you communication wise? You can hit on. We've touched on the NCAA rules of when you can communicate in past conversations, but if you want to hit on that, who can connect with you when in your preferred method? Yeah.
Well, currently I don't anticipate meeting with anybody one-on-one
right
anytime soon, even though I'd love to. I've always been an email guy, I guess. So for me, an email usually works the best. Text is fine. We do phone calls. We've done some virtual phone calls since COVID. But I would say, initially, for me, that's the best way to establish contact is send an email. We can go from there, but at least it's a good starting point for me.
Perfect. And then if you're familiar with a player, do you follow up with them and try to bring them on campus, or if you're not familiar with them, do you want the coach's contact? Can you kind of talk a little bit about like what you want in the email and like what they can answer that?
So typically after getting an email and, probably doing some research, talking with their club coach, high school coach, different people that I know that also would know them, we would try to get them on campus to check things out, to meet with me, as importantly, to meet with some of our team. Usually when we have prospective student athletes on campus, I try to get a couple of our existing players to meet with them. I think that's an important part of the process for us.
Yeah.
But from there, regarding that initial email, I want to know who they are, what they're all about, what program, that they're interested in studying, and if they don't have an idea, that's fine too. Want a little bit of their soccer background, who they've played for, what position, those basic types of things. It's always important to me that they've done a little bit of research. So instead of just a kind of blanket generic email that somebody could send to 300 coaches, they might know something about our program or something about our school, or, they had a family member attend Edgewood, or, some little
some kind of connection,
So, so they can personalize it a little bit. For me, that's important. Doesn't have to be a book, paragraph or 2 is fine. But I want to know that they actually have taken a little time to sit down and write it. And then, like I said, from there, we look at hopefully bringing them on campus. In the current climate, I don't know when that will be possible.
Right.
But that would, certainly that kind of be our path. I mean, from there, I'd also plan on getting out to see them, whether it's at a showcase or if they're in their high school season, club season, what have you.
Right.
But certainly planning out a time or 2 where I'm actually going to watch and observe them in a game.
Awesome.
So.
And you guys actually had an advantage too. If they're from the Madison area, you could even check out a training.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yep. Yeah, we've done that before. A lot of club coaches have been great in that regard. And to me, that's a great way to go in and really see what a player's about.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Q, you have anything that you want to?
No, very similar to Coach Helmer. Email is probably our preferred method, or at least the most popular. I wouldn't even say preferred, but obviously it's part of my responsibility and our staff responsibility to represent our program and university. So however you communicate, we'll get in touch with you and get back with you. But I think email is probably the most popular way now, though text is gaining some momentum as well. We still have some traditional phone calls and enjoy that, especially when we get a little bit later in the process, because I think about the process, and Coach Helmer hit on this a little bit, is finding right fit for the student athlete. A school and a major, making sure that soccer is going to fit, because we've all seen soccer end a lot of different ways. A lot of times by the student athlete's choice as they get into school and find out they have other opportunities and other extracurricular activities and groups that they can be a part of. So, I really stressed all of our prospective student athletes in the recruiting process, whether they're on campus or whether we're talking over email or phone, is visit a lot of schools and find the fit that's going to be right for you. We are fortunate that we get a lot of transfer students being a public school, and transferring is okay and it works, but you're a first year student twice. So really try to do the things like Coach Helmer was saying and get on campus. That's important to us. We'll start the process, but eventually we want you on campus. We want you to see Whitewater. We want you to talk to people in the majors that you're looking into to studying in. We want you to talk to prospective or current students and make sure that it's going to be a good fit for you, if you do choose to come there as well. So,
yeah.
As far as identifying players, so I might need to be up. I think
no, please, no, cool.
Eric hit on a lot of them, which is, we want to get out and see a place, high school, club soccer, whatever it is, keeps updating your schedule. The other good avenue is ID camps. There's some ID camps where they might have multiple schools in attendance, or there's some where they run where it just might be at that school. But that's another good avenue where you can get on campus in some cases, or the opportunity to work with members of the coaching staff from specific schools or maybe even multiple schools and kind of see if it's going to be a good fit as well. So that's, the one-day camps is a good avenue as well that's kind of picked up in the last few years.
Right. Yeah. And you guys do a few of those. Derek, do you do those at your school?
So it's something that we haven't yet done on the women's side. It's something that I'm hopeful in this next year that we'll start doing it. But in addition to that, I've been able to do certain camps in the summer that
right.
can work like an ID camp. Coach Q's great. He's invited me to his ID camps. I work his camps. So we're hoping that in the next year we'll have something small set up.
Awesome.
Matt,
yep, go ahead.
Just jump in real quick and say that I know both these guys pretty well. Coach Q in particular, I think, is the fastest texter at this side of the Mississippi. So they're comfortable with different platforms. They can communicate on different platforms with you. I think going to campus is a big deal. It gives you a sense as to whether, that's the right place for you. You get a sense of that. And I guess, I have a question for the two guys, because I've heard this from students and from parents during this time. They're concerned that their inability to come to campus, puts them way behind the 8 ball when it comes to the recruiting process. But can you speak to the urgency of reaching out now more so than ever? And are they too late? How does that work a little bit? I don't know if that's a question you're asking later on, Matt, but I thought, I don't want people to get frozen and not communicate because they think they're too late. And I didn't know if you guys could address that at all.
Yeah, Q, why don't we start with you? That is on my list, so that's a good transition.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I think these times we're all in the same boat, whether you're a prospective student athlete or whether you're a coach, no matter how many years you're doing it, which means we're all kind of trying to figure it out as we go. I think Ben hit on a couple of things. One is I don't think anybody's behind the 8 ball because everybody's playing by the same set of rules. Now, granted, some might have visited some campuses early. For coaches, we joke we're doing some things different. Derek mentioned it, more video calls than we've probably done in the past, which have been productive. But at the end of the day, I think if we're in this business professionally, we know that we're going to have a pretty busy fall or next spring, whenever it is, to catch up on identifying players and seeing players play. So it's still going to happen. It's just going to happen in a quicker time frame and maybe a smaller window than the past. But I think the key, and Ben hit on it, is I wouldn't be complacent with reaching out. To continue to reach out and just say, hey, I'm interested in your school. We're getting emails quite regularly like that. Everybody understands we can't come to see you play, but and maybe you don't even have a schedule right now or no, but when you get your schedule, we'll let you know. So kind of keep us up to date as much as you can. We've come, my belief with my staff and kind of our MO the last 10 years has been, we don't do a lot of recruiting in the fall usually because we're really focused on our team. I think we owe that to our current student athletes. Well, obviously that's probably we're gonna have to change our ways a little bit this fall if things get back going, just to make up for the spring. So yeah,
Right.
by all means, continue to communicate. Let us know, show interest. A lot of campuses, Whitewater included, I'm sure Edgewood does as well. They have, they're doing virtual tours online, or at least some video overview with some drone footage and kind of give the idea of campus. Not the same thing as being there, but even in these times, you can be using your resources online, club coaches to start gathering a lot of information about campuses as well as the athletic programs of those campuses.
Awesome. Derek, do you have anything to add to that? Can you maybe touch on like what you do with video and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like Coach Q said, number one, it's not too late for anybody because everybody's in the same boat. Okay. Two, I think most, if not all, colleges have a way to virtually visit their campus. I know our admissions department put together, some great ways to check out Edgewood virtually. It's the next best thing to actually setting foot on campus. They've set up virtual meetings then with professors in the certain major that you're interested in. And then they can pipe me in, they can pipe some players in as well. So they can really put together a full visit virtually. I think the other thing that was brought up is the importance of having prospective student athletes contact coaches during this time. And I don't think anybody knows what the summer is going to look like, but if it's a summer without showcases and club soccer, I mean, that becomes even more important for players to reach out. Most of the coaches are in the same boat. We're sitting at home. I love to get emails. I mean, I'm answering every email in record time during. So, I mean, I think I speak for most coaches that we want contact, And there's sometimes where I'm bored at home. I mean, I'd love to get contact, texts or emails, whatever. This is a perfect time to reach out. And I think that also illustrates the fact that, players have to do some research on their own that they might not have had to do in the past. I mean, they should be looking up schools online, looking at their rosters, looking at the programs the schools offer, all those things. And then I think it's really important that they, start making some initial contacts to coaches.
Yeah. That's really good advice. Even like, would you be interested in like if players may, so we've talked about in the past of, this is a good time for players to put videos together of, their some games that they have, and they can start editing that and sending it out. Right. And then one thing that I don't know that we hit on is like, what if players did some sort of like personal video of like them doing technical work? Is that something that coaches are interested? Is it not?
I would be. I mean, I've gone through all the episodes of Tiger King already on Netflix. I've watched pretty much every show that there is on Netflix. I got time right now. Send me the videos. Yeah, I think, when people are putting together videos, I don't necessarily want to see the final kick, like, the goal that's scored. I want to see the buildup. I want to see some other things than just the end result, than just the goal.
Right.
Not just pure highlights. Even if it's, just a 15-minute game clip where they're involved quite a bit. I mean, to me, that's perfect. I've got time to watch it right now.
Right. Yeah. Show some movement off the ball.
Yeah, exactly. I would agree with what Coach Helmer said. I think video is a tool. We all use it with our teams. I mean, that was our spring season because of COVID. So what have we been doing the last 5 weeks? We've been having team video sessions in a format like this. So we watch a great deal of video anyhow on our own team. I think Derek can have a few things. I'd rather see 15, 20 minutes of you playing than maybe just all highlights. But highlights aren't bad either. I think Derek's right. We'll take anything at this time. I think what's also important to understand is, I think the prospective student athletes need to understand it, and the coaches need to understand it as well, which is because of this, it's going to delay or change some of our processes on when we might offer players or tell you have a spot in our team, and everybody's a little bit different on how they do that and what they do. We don't do tryouts at University of Wisconsin Whitewater. think if soccer is an important part of it, you should know where you're going to stand kind of before you come in. But, you know, some of that might change, and maybe we do have to have a small tryout or a few people at least looking if we don't get the opportunity to see them play. So, you know, I think the programs that'll thrive in this are the programs that are able to adapt to the changes and understand that things might not fit in the box the way they fit in the past year. So, and I know Coach Helmer will think that way as well, and we're definitely doing that at Whitewater. So we're aware of just like the athletes, they got some struggles and differences, but it's different on our end as well. So it's going to be kind of a moving process as we go forward, and so things will be different.
Yeah, that's actually some really, really good advice, because there's obviously anxiety with all this, and it's really, really helpful for the players to know that, hey, listen, if they're still kind of figuring stuff out, I'm still, you know, this is a new world to me. Let's figure it out together. And I think that's important for them to know that you guys can work that out together. You just got to reach out. You can't sit back and wait for something to happen. If you have some questions, please, you know, just reach out, right? So.
Mac, can I say one thing about that too? Because I think when you're communicating, since we're talking about communication and different modes of communication, just recognize that, you know, you're telling someone something when you're communicating, and gear your communication with the intention of giving your coaches a sense as to who you are and what your personality is. I'll tell you, I've been in conversations with both Coach Derek and Coach Q, and we want to know the personality of a player. And sometimes that comes through in the way you communicate and what you communicate. That doesn't mean that they're looking for the same kind of player, you know, player 1 through 32 on their roster. You could be a quiet person, but still be able to show your personality. We have really quiet players that came through the recruiting process that are absolute demons on the field. And so where you can communicate in multiple ways is you might give one impression in your conversation, but you might give a completely different impression with a video that you sent in. And I don't think that that's actually bad. But I think just to be aware that every time you're communicating, you are communicating an impression to the coaches in as much as they are to you. So just keep that in mind. Vary as much of the communication as you can. Show different parts of your personality. That's helpful for them to see how things fit between you and the team, not just on the field, but also off the field, which I do know is kind of important for both programs. Getting along and having a chemistry and a committed goal is important. And they can figure those things out by talking to you.
Awesome. That's actually a really, really good transition into my next question. Q, I'll start with you. Is there a specific player profile that you look for when you're recruiting? Academic, social, soccer ability? If you could touch on those areas or anything I'm missing.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Coach Helmer and I, we're in NCAA Division III, 440 women's teams in Division III, and I always tell people there's different groups, levels, whatever you want to call them in there, being public schools, size of enrollment, private schools, their resources, what they kind of do. So they have to do their research. So, you know, for everybody, you know, I think it's a little bit different, kind of where you fall in that process. So what do we look for? This is going to sound real generic, and we're going to laugh, but we are fortunate being a state school, and our tuition price point and some of our majors that we get a lot of interest. So I look for soccer players. Ben and I have had this conversation. I know it sounds simple, but I think we have the luxury to take the best athletes, the best soccer players, and personality and their attitude's a big part of it, because in Division III, out of those 440 teams, we can't give you athletic scholarships. So we do know that you're putting the time in. I think that's what makes Division III so great. But at the end of the day, we want people that want to be rewarded for putting the time and hard work in, because we don't have any scholarship money or anything to keep you interested or motivating you outside of your own will to play. So we do look a lot at attitude and commitment. Good students, I found that good students, because they're taking care of their academics and they're responsible and they're on track, they tend to be pretty good student athletes in our program for what we demand. So again, I think it's a little bit different. So we look for soccer players. We'll adjust our shape and formation around soccer players. We don't get caught up in positions very often saying we have to have, you know, so many center backs. You know, take out goalkeepers; they're kind of their own thing, obviously. And you need but I will say this to help the student athletes and prospective student athletes: the ability to play 2, 3 different positions, that helps you when you go on to the next level, and it helps your coaches and your program as you go on to the next level, because it's going to open up more doors and opportunities for you, and obviously it opens up more doors and opportunities for your coaching staff with options they give. So we get out and watch players. Obviously, athletically, we have a certain level that we want them at. But soccer-wise, we want you to be able to understand the game, be technical, be confident on the ball, and then again, personality. We're run a pretty disciplined program, both on and off the field. So you fit that mold. Are you 100% in? Are you going to do the things that we ask you to do on and off the field?
Awesome. Derek, what kind of athlete, what kind of player you look for?
I'd say, specific profile, Julie Ertz. If we could get 25 Julie Ertz's, I'd be thrilled. I think she's
probably do pretty well, Coach.
Best current player right now. No, I mean, we don't have a specific profile that somebody has to fit into. We don't have the luxury, first of all, and for some of the reasons that Coach Q hit on. I think if we had to really generalize it and kind of sum it up in a sentence or two, I mean, we're looking for players that love the game, that love the sport. We want people that just love the game. They're passionate about it. I think at its core, that's one of the most important things for us that we look for. Certainly, we want players that are committed to academics, really committed in anything they do. I mean, it's fine if they're multi-sport athletes in high school. We've had several of those. We have several current players that do another sport in college. They run track in the spring, but we're looking for that same commitment level in no matter what they do.
Right.
But outside of that, there isn't one specific thing that
academically, I'm sure you're a little bit different than the state school.
Yes and no. We have players come to us from a really wide range of grade point averages and ACT or SAT scores. It fluctuates. So really what what we look for is maybe somebody that doesn't have a really, really high GPA, but then we try to look into that. Maybe they took a lot of really difficult AP classes, so their GPA wasn't as high as somebody
right.
that didn't do that. Maybe they had some family things going on, and that affected their GPA. But what we look for, kind of those underlying things, like are they committed to academics? Are they committed to being a student athlete, not an athlete student? I mean, there's a reason why it's
right,
student athlete, because being a D3 athlete, the student always comes first,
right?
And
it's
tough to balance those two things, and we want to make sure that somebody can handle it, but more so that they're willing to do whatever they can to handle it.
Hey, Matt,
right.
Can I add one thing?
Go ahead. Please, yeah.
And again, I think it's different, and this isn't a bad thing, but this is where I think it's on the student athletes to also ask the right coaches to coaching staffs and find what they want. But one other thing we want is we want people that want to win, and we want competitors. And it might be different from one program to the next, but we've been fortunate. We've had a lot of program success. So we'll ask players in the process, do you want to win? But winning might come at a different experience than you would if you went to a different school, meaning you might have to grind and wait your time a little bit more.
Right.
Or maybe you're going to get thrown in the fire right away because you're our best option and you're not going to get the time to be developed and groomed. So
to adapt.
Yeah, and that's okay. But what do you want? But if you want to win and you also want to play 90 minutes, then you need to ask those questions, because if you're not going to fit in the 90 minutes, you're not going to be happy ultimately. So we want players that they're competitive, they're going to push each other, and it's kind of maybe it's an unreasonable request for everybody, but we want people that are going to fit in the team philosophy but still be driven individually to succeed, and that's what makes some players special. So you do have to do your homework and ask those questions and see if you're going to fit there, because you're expecting to go in and play all the time. There's a place for you, but make sure you're doing your homework to find that place to meet the goals. And you might have to sacrifice, I want to go to the NCAA tournament every year, but I want to play 90 minutes as a freshman. So those are conversations you have to have with your staff, or with your coaches as you're going through the recruiting process.
Yeah.
Just so that we understand kind of just a little bit more detail around what I know Coach Helmer and Coach Q are saying, which is just so that you know where winning starts, it doesn't start when the whistle blows. It actually is in training. It's actually in off season. It's actually in preseason. The training environment, is where the winning and the losing part comes into play. So the level of intensity and passion you've got to have that Coach Helmer talks about translates into some specific ways in the weight room and in your level of conditioning and in what you eat. It is the total package. And then when the whistle blows, that's kind of the fun time to go in there and try to execute on everything that you've done. So when they talk about winning, they're not necessarily just referencing the game. They're talking about everything that goes into being ready when that whistle blows.
It's also good advice. Q, can I touch on something that you brought up? Do you openly discuss in your environment with your team that if there's a player comes in that is better than what they're doing, that they can knock them out of? Like, do you try to create that competition in your environment? Because all the best teams do. That's how it works, right?
Well, it's very simple. Ben will laugh. He hears this all the time when he's down with our program. But I just had a meeting with our last wrap-up meeting with our current players this week. It was the same thing. I always tell our current players that what you did in the past is what you did in the past, and you're not entitled to anything moving forward. Meaning if a new player comes in our program, whether they're a transfer or an incoming player, and they give us the best opportunity to win in that role, that's what we're going to go with. But I will say, I always tell them as well, being a returner can help you and hurt you. So if you're at the same level as a player and you've committed and done what we've asked and been positive to have around, we're going to give you the nod for your commitment that you've given us. But if somebody comes in that's better, I don't care if they're a senior, junior, or whatever. And maybe it's a fault of ours to some degree, but we want to win, and we want to win at the highest level. So for our program, we're very upfront. I tell our incoming players the same thing. Again, we don't do tryouts. So through the identification process, we'll tell you have a spot in your team, but that's it. What you do with that spot and what you earn with that spot, that's up to you. And like Coach Ben said, that starts, for our incoming group this August, that started as soon as they committed to us, and maybe even more important now with COVID and not having a spring season. So we're very open about what we want and how we want to achieve it, and partly because we don't want players in our program that are unhappy because they don't meet those. So I'd rather be upfront ahead of time, and if it doesn't fit your program, you can move on and find somebody else. And there's a lot of opportunities. And again, there's a place for everybody to play. Rush is a great organization. There's a place for everybody just within Division III to play, not even counting Division II, Division I, NAIA, and junior colleges. So there's a place to play. It's finding what you want to get out of the place to play. Now, I'm in a little different circumstance than maybe Coach Helmer or some private schools, as far as I have the luxury of I'm not admissions driven by my university. So my university doesn't care if I have 30 players or if I have 25 players. So I have the luxury to maybe choose a little bit more, where some programs, maybe would carry a JV team because they're more admission driven. Those are questions as a student athlete you need to ask in the process. If you do see a large roster, ask why they have a large roster. And it's not a bad thing necessarily, but you just want to do your homework on why things are the way they are. Same with our program. The best prospective student athletes we have are the ones that come in with a notebook with 20 questions for the hour and a half they're going to meet with myself and my staff on their visit, because I know they're getting a good understanding of our program when they leave, and we're getting a good understanding of them. And not all of them are going to be the right fit, but we're going to leave knowing that both of us have done our homework and made that decision.
Awesome. Derek, do you have anything else to add to that specific?
Yeah. Oh, really good points, Coach Q. Same with us. I mean, plain and simple, the best players are going to play. It's not like high school necessarily, not like club in many ways. At the end of the day, the best players are going to play. And that not only can change from year to year. It doesn't matter if you're an incoming freshman, but I think that can change, week to week. If somebody's not cutting it in training, they can lose their spot 5 games into the season. And I think cultivating that type of competitive environment is the goal, without a doubt.
Right. If you have a competitive environment, then complacency is less likely to rear its head.
Yeah, absolutely. I think specifically to us, and at Edgewood, we're a young program. I recently took over, and so we've got lots of spots available. We have we've had some complacency the last year or two. So I feel really good. We have a really strong class coming in now, and there's a good chance that we may start 6, 7, 8 freshmen. That it's a possibility.
Right.
And our returning players know that, and we're starting to see them do some things that maybe they haven't done in the past. So, it's a cycle.
Actually, really awesome that you just said things they haven't done in the past, because that kind of moves to the off season and what they're doing there. So really good transition to, can you kind of explain, you can start in the off season if you want to, since this is kind of where we are. You can start now, or you can start what it's like in the fall, but like what a typical week is for your team. Let's say call it in season typical week, or the general, what a year cycle looks like for your team.
Yeah. And that's difficult because a normal day is different for a freshman taking some gen ed classes versus a junior that's, a nursing major that's doing clinicals and, stuff like that. So, it's all across the board. I would say typically in season, we are training for an hour and a half to 2 hours a day. That's usually early evening. That practice looks different depending on if we're in preseason versus middle of our season, if it's the day before a game versus the day after a game, all those things would factor in. Once or twice a week, we would have a team study table after practice. We would possibly have a video session, if we're incorporating a new formation, or if we really have some certain things about an opponent coming up that we want to highlight.
Right.
So there's just a lot of factors that go in, but pretty standard, let's say 2 hours for soccer. They're working out probably 2 to 3 times a week in season, maybe 2 times a week. So that's
right. Outside of your trainings.
Outside of our training, sometimes in conjunction with our training, or maybe as part of our training, depending on what they're working on. After our season, we try to give them basically the month of November off, so that they can focus on finishing out the semester strong. They're still getting together to kick around on their own, right, and stuff like that, but there's nothing formal for them.
A lighter schedule. Yeah,
it is. And then through the winter months, they're on. We have an app-based strength and speed program through Volt that they can do on their own.
Awesome. And you can monitor that as their coach?
Yeah, I can monitor it. Our athletic trainers monitor it. For example, right now with COVID, most people aren't allowed in a gym or have access to a gym or a fitness center. So they've modified it so that they can do most of the exercises at home,
awesome,
with a lot of body weight stuff, or, things that they might have at home. So, they make do with it. And then, I would say that leads up to our short spring season. Typically it's about 5 weeks long in the spring, according to the NCAA, where we'll practice probably 3 times a week. It's heavily technical and individual ball work. Since we don't have our incoming players yet, we've lost our seniors for the most part. We'll usually have an alumni game in the spring, and then we can play 1 contest. So it's, essentially a scrimmage against another local school. Coach Q, maybe we can set that up next year or the year after that, something like that. And then, in large part due to the NCAA. I mean, we only get contact with them during our fall season, and then for that short period in the spring, for a lot of it, we rely on our leadership group or captains. They can still work out with our speed and strength team, those types of things. Really, one of our overriding things that we want them and encourage them. We just want them to play as much as they can in the off season, spring and summer, whether that's, in a 7v7 league, if it's on a women's team, if it's co-ed or whatever. I mean, we want them to get out and play as much as they can in the off season.
Q, what does your schedule look like in the
so Coach Helmer hit on a lot of good things there as well, especially just we want him to play and get touches outside of soccer, whether it's your fall season or not. If you're watching The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan special, you read some stuff when Kobe Bryant passed. I mean, what makes you great at whatever level? It doesn't have to be at the highest level. What makes those players great is their work ethic outside of the structured practices and games, right? So anytime our athletes are getting more in, as long as physically they're not doing too much in the fall, I think that's a huge bonus. But for us, I'll just go through it real quick. I think the fall season, what Derek hit on, again, 440 teams in women's soccer, I think we're all doing pretty much the same thing. We're trying to maximize the fall season, maximize the time we have with our student athletes. So for us, a typical week is, 5 days of practice, 4 days of practice, 2 games, and a day off. That's a typical 7-day week. For us, the only it's a little bit different than Derek is we're about 2.5 hours a day commitment, meaning we'll practice for an hour and a half, and then we either have an hour classroom session or we'll have an hour with our speed and strength coach. In season, a lot of core strength, injury prevention work, recovery type stuff, because we don't want to make you bigger, faster, stronger, because we need your peak performance on the field. But come January to May, that second semester, that's where we're going to make you a little bit bigger, faster, strong. So for us, we try to take off over winter break. They have a workout plan, daily workout plan from our speed and strength coach, but it's a little bit more laid back. But it's still some things that we want to keep their fitness up if they gain in the fall until they leave in December. And then we come back in January. We're 3 to 4 days a week with our speed and strength coach. We can't be there as a staff, as Derek hit on by NCAA rules, but as long as you're enrolled in classes, your speed and strength coach can be working out with your team. So again, these are things to ask in the process, but different programs have different resources athletically. Whitewater, we're blessed with some amazing athletic facilities, and we're staffed extremely well, in large part because of some of our mainstream sports compete at the highest level with football, men's basketball, baseball, women's basketball. So we're staffed very well in speed and strength, which allows our team to work with them all year. That'll take us up to our 5 weeks in the spring, that then we'll work with our speed and strength coach as well as be doing, our 3 days of spring practice. Very similar to what Coach Helmer mentioned in the spring, more individual work and technical work. So we'll do some evaluation with our players, give them things to work on, and we try to make our spring sessions based on those areas that our players need to work on individually and give them time to develop it. Then when we send you home, then we hope you're doing your daily workout plans from speed and strength and being ready to go in August, because we don't have time to get players fit and ready to go in August. So we touched on it earlier as playing, Derek touched on it, and he's going through this with I've been there. The growth of some young teams is, being a freshman and playing a lot is great, but you better work hard, because when you come in as a sophomore, somebody's going to be pushing you to make you better. That's a competitive process. So if you get complacent and think you're good, and you let your fitness go over the summer, you might be a better soccer player. But if you're not fit, because it's a grind when we get into preseason and the number of days, and then we're playing 2 or 3 games a week for that early part of September. So
yeah,
that our players are following speed and strength. But much like Derek said, our players they use a couple different platforms, but they're able to do them all remotely and stay up on their workouts whenever they're not on campus for us.
Awesome. Well, and you said it too, one of the benefits of about my question about the competitive environment is that's a motivator, right? Over the summer, if you're in a competitive environment and you're slacking off in the summer, that's gonna potentially have some problems for you, moving into the fall season. So, all right. So I have a fun question. I haven't asked it in a while. I have that question for you guys, and then I'll turn it over to Kyle. So the question is, I'll start with you, Q, since you just ended that one. What would your starters say about you, your coaching style, about you personally, and what would the bench players say? It could be the same answer. It might not be the same answer. What would your players say about you and your coaching style and how you run your program?
Yeah, well, when I got into college soccer, Coach Roy Patton, was at Rush and is now back at Rush, he summed it up perfectly, and my players would probably follow not this direct, but I think at the end of the day, 11 players like me, 6 players tolerate me, and everybody else wishes they had different. That Coach Ben John was the head coach. I mean, at the end of the day, rightfully or wrongfully, that's the role as a head coach, right? But I think they would tell you that we're very structured, that we're very clear in what we expect and demand out of our players. And, you know, I think the biggest compliment we get when we have our exit seniors sometimes is, and they've all went through different things, you know, in their program. And all your 4 years is your own experience, and you're going to have ups and downs in that 4 years, no matter what your role is or where you play. But I think one of the things that we always get is that we're consistent in our personnel decisions and the reason we make it. I think that's very important. So I think both groups would say that as well. But of course, if you're not playing, you want to be playing, right? And that's a good thing. We want our players that aren't playing as much or coming off the bench, or maybe they didn't see much time at all. Don't get me wrong, we want them to play. That's the competitiveness you were talking about and how they're going to get better. We just want them to trust our process and do it the right way, because they'll get the results.
Yeah. Awesome. That's a good answer. Derek.
What was the question again, Matt?
What would your players say about you, whether it be your coaching style, your demands of them, the starters, the bench players?
I lost my train of thought because I so enjoyed listening to Coach Q's. I mean, I would say, you know, it's no surprise to you guys that know me, but I'm pretty laid back. I'm not a screamer. I'm not a yeller. I try to be more cerebral and one-on-one with somebody, you know, than kind of making a big to-do of something. I think starters, non-starters, you know, anybody in the program would say that they know I have their back. I've heard that from a lot of players, and you know, whether that's an issue with school or on campus or friends or family, or you know, anything, doesn't have to just be soccer.
Right.
I try to stay connected with the whole person, and so I think they know that I've got their back. That our program has their back with whatever they're dealing with. I think that's probably the best way to sum it up.
Yeah. No, hey, if you don't have a supportive coach, it's really, really difficult, right?
Could I add one more thing to that?
Please do. Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody's different, and what we talk about as a staff, and I've learned over the years, and it's taken time with some experience, but there's a lot of different ways to be successful in this game and have a successful program. And again, I'm not just measuring success by wins and losses. Our players' academics is way more important than that. You know, what they do after their college experience is more important than that as well. But for me personally, and every coach is different, but I tell our players right away when they come in first meeting in August that this is a class for them. And I'm going to run it like a professor. And that's just my belief. So it's going to be an educational experience. But me personally, we're going to run like a professor. So we're always there for you. I think we probably have a more personal relationship than some professors, but I'm not one to call in and ask what players are doing on the weekend or in their own time. I just worried about what we're putting into soccer and what we're getting out of it. So everybody's a little different, and it's not right way or wrong way. Other coaches are much more probably hands-on and personal with some players, and that's good as well. So again, I think it's one of those things when you're looking at schools, what relationship do you want out of coach, right?
Yeah.
And your coaching staff. So
yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because I'm probably more of a Derek type coach than I am a Ben John type coach. And everybody's got their styles and everybody's motivated different ways, right? So it's what's great about, if I may plug Rush, what's great about us is I know all of you guys and I know what my players maybe need from different coaches. So that's a really good question for players who are listening to this. Is you can ask your club coach, but it's really, really important to kind of know the style of your coach, because sometimes, if you need that motivation, which sometimes they've needed for me to scream at them, sometimes I struggle to do that, right? But sometimes if you need that softer voice to have that one-on-one to, get you motivated that way, maybe if you have a coach who's, hard on you and, even though they care or whatever, it might not be the level or the not level, but the type of communication you need to kind of get out of it what you want. So that's a really, really good point about, coach personality type and how they motivate their players.
Yeah, on a staff, there's, hopefully, ideally, and we're all budgeted where staffs are limited. Coach Helmer and I, I'm sure, have a lot of the same staffing questions. But ideally, when I put a staff together, you're looking for that balance, right? And so, hopefully we have somebody that fits all those needs. But, I think it's, again, important that you ask those questions and know what you're kind of looking for.
So,
for sure, Derek, sorry.
If I may, is I know both these guys really well. And what I would say about them as coaches is they're very cerebral as coaches. They have a high level of integrity and honesty. They're not going to BS players. And they genuinely care about them beyond just these individuals as players. They care about them as people. And that's one distinction I want to make, which is what is your coaching style might be a little different from who you are as a person.
For sure.
And I think those two things are it's important to understand that, because sometimes we have players that don't necessarily appreciate our coaching style in a given moment. But if you're a person that genuinely cares about them and you're invested in them and you're loyal to them and you're honest with them, then they can look past that moment because you're going to build that relationship. And,
sure.
and both these individuals that are on this phone call are people that fundamentally care about that relationship. And I think that's where there's so little misunderstanding in their program because of how they quantify the coaching experience as a little bit different from who they are as people off the field. That's when that's kind of synced in with each other, I think that's a powerful thing for players, and it provides some level of consistency, even though their approach might be a little different.
Definitely. Yep, that was well said.
I just want to add kind of two themes that Coach Q's touched on a lot, and I think they're kind of two great things to sum up this whole talk. One is that different programs have different ways of doing things, and that's okay, as long, because I think a lot of our goals are the same in the end. How we get there, it's going to look different. Everybody doesn't do it the same. And then two, the onus is on the prospective student athlete to find out those differences, to do research, to contact different schools. They have to be invested in that portion of the recruiting process. I mean, it's just so important and often overlooked, I think.
Yeah, that's really, really good advice. Derek, I'm going to start with you. Kyle, you got the curveball question ready to throw at these guys?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, do it.
So in recruiting, there's a lot of experiences that you guys, I'm assuming, have, whether they be positive or negative with players. So could you touch on either a positive or negative recruiting experience to make you say, we need this player immediately, or let's maybe look in another direction to kind of help the players and parents that are on right now, either to move and do things the right way, or help them understand the way to not kind of do things through the recruiting process?
Yeah, good question. What jumps out to me, something that that I really, really dislike in the process is when somebody doesn't let you know that they're not interested in your school. I've got thick skin. I can handle it. If I contact you, and you don't tell me, hey, I'm just not interested. You might not have my program of choice. I'm looking for a bigger school, whatever the case. I'm okay if up front you just let us know, then we move on to somebody else. That's the nature of the recruiting beast. But I think, I see it a lot where, we think we're maybe in a different spot or position with somebody. Our expectations don't match their expectations. And I think it just speaks to really being upfront and honest in that process, you know, from my perspective and from the prospective student athletes, you know, perspective. And if they don't know, and that's fine too, to say is, you know, I'm looking at a lot of schools, I just don't know right now. That's okay too.
Yeah, that's fine. It's better than not communicating and just ghosting, or, you know, just not giving you any information at all.
Yeah. I mean, we're adults. We can handle rejection. we don't like it, but you know, I'd rather folks, you know, be upfront right away, and then we move on from there. So that's just, I think the biggest thing that jumped out for me in regards to.
No, that's a really good answer.
Yeah.
Q, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a great one, Helmer. The only thing I want to add to that a little bit too is even later in the process. I mean, sometimes we have players that we openly know they're down to 2 schools, and you know, we just figure out as they don't return our calls or they're not communicating that they chose the other one. But just, I have a lot more respect when somebody calls us and just tells us, and I'm just going to wish them well. We don't have any will towards you. Again, it's a process, and it's got to be the right fit. And so the only thing I would add to Derek's is I think that is even more important as you get later and further into the recruiting process, that you're honest and upfront. We're going to find our athletes, and we want what's best for you. So just be honest with us that we're no longer in consideration, or you've chosen, you know, even if it's somebody that, you know, you may feel is a rival of us or whatever. Well, then we'll have fun competing over the next 4 years against you. So be upfront. I have 2. One is a lot of parent involvement, and I think parents are great in the process, and they're a great resource. So I'm not getting at, not that I don't want questions from parents when you visit campus or we talk, but when I'm consistently getting emails strictly from parents, I get concerned, because I wonder what's your motivation to play? Is it your parents wanting you to play in college, or is it you? So, you know, and sometimes we can tell the parents wrote the email, even though it might have your name on it. So I guess for me, that's one of my kind of pet peeves, or one of my things that kind of will make us think different and scare us away a little bit, if it's constant pressure from the parents. Again, if it's communication from both the prospective student athlete and the parent, that's okay. But when the parent starts dominating, it's a concern, because they're not going to be there for you when you're a first year in our program, and you're going to have to learn to communicate with us and our staff and your teammates. So that's one concern. My second one is a little bit minor, but it's kind of a pet peeve. I get it all the time. My email is Quammer, because it's Quamme, and then Ryan's my first name put at the end. So I get Coach Quammer a lot, or I get I'd like to play at University of Wisconsin-Madison, which I would love Coach Wilkins' salary as well, but I unfortunately don't get it. So the other pet peeve is when you're doing those emails, take the time to make sure you got our name right, that you got our school right. It's okay. I tell people all the time, it's okay to use a template email. Coach Helmer talked about this earlier, but add a sentence or two that personalizes to the school. And more importantly, those areas that are highlighted that you're changing, make sure you get them right. Do we still follow up with athletes? Yeah, but we're a little gun shy right away, because we know that attention to detail is very important in our program if you're going to have success, and you've missed it on your first impression with us. And I think we all know how first impressions mean a lot. So those are 2 things from my end that I guess would kind of be pet peeves in the recruiting process.
Q, I think it just happens with the E just so close to the R right there. I think that it's just different.
No.
They would play this.
Yeah. I don't lose too much sleep over that one.
Why don't you just change your email?
Yeah, Derek, I work in the state system.
Gotcha.
That's a 10-year process.
Okay, fair enough.
Awesome. All right, so I'll give you guys the last little closing remarks. So I have a feeling that I see when we did this graduation ceremony the other day, I follow Ben John, and I'm not doing that again. So I'll have you guys do a quick closing remarks of anything you want to say or promote or whatever. I'll do my little closing, and then I'm gonna hand over to Ben, because I know Ben would like to thank you guys personally for coming today. So, Q, why don't you go first?
Perfect. Well, first off, thanks, Matt, for having us, and everybody at Rush, at both Rush clubs for having us a part of it. This is one of the joys of our profession, and I tell people this. I guess my closing remark was as prospective student athletes, use your resources. Your high school coach, your club, former club coaches, but also use us. I tell our players that come to camp, and every year, every camp, 1 or 2 people take me up on it, which is perfect, which is, I think it's part of my job to be an ambassador to college soccer, and I'll help you or answer questions, even if it's not Whitewater. Well, sometimes I'll get a question, Coach, thanks for your time at Whitewater. The majors don't fit. What do you think here or there? Obviously, I can't tell other schools, who they should recruit or who they should take, but I can guide you guys and give you some advice, and I'm happy to do that, especially over email. It's quick this time. Derek already talked about it, but right now we're begging for emails to help people. So use your resources, but some of those resources might be a college coach that you gain rapport for, and then for whatever reason, that program's not going to work, but you can still use them for some resources as you go through. And it kind of leads into the whole thing, which is we touched on a lot today, but take ownership of your college search and do your research and take ownership. And if you do that, I think you'll have a great college experience and a great student athlete experience at wherever you choose. So thank you very much. I enjoy doing these talks. It's a little different than in person, but I do a handful, or even 2 handfuls, 10 of these or so a year of either in person, these college talks, and they're great. They give great resources, and we learn things. I love listening to how Coach Helmer does things, and we all learn from each other when we do these performances.
Definitely.
Well, so thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Derek.
Coach Helmer?
Yeah. Thanks, Matt, for setting this up. Thank you, Rush. A lot of similar things to what Coach Q just said. We are ambassadors of the sport and of the game. So I encourage anyone to reach out to me, parents, players, whatever, even if it doesn't end up with you coming to Edgewood, ask questions. Most of us know most of the other college coaches and programs, and, can make phone calls or, give recommendations to other schools and coaches. I mean, we're a tight-knit community. So I would encourage players to use this time at home, work on your game. You've got hours and hours at home to maybe work on a specific part of your game, whether it's, certain moves that you want to perfect, increase your speed or agility or, whatever. But, we're in a different time where you might never have this free time to do something like that. Or I encourage you to pick up a new hobby or read a book that you haven't been able to do in a long time, or connect with family, that you haven't been able to before. But, use this time wisely, because we don't know when we're going to be back playing. We hope it's soon, but it could be a couple more months. I mean, I think we all can't wait to, start playing and coaching again, but have to take a wait and see approach. So
awesome.
Coach Helmer,
very good advice.
I got some hobbies for you. You can pick up.
Yeah.
Give me a call. We can spend some time.
I think you'll have to message me privately on that.
Hey, great advice from both of you. Again, this information in these talks, they're so valuable to our groups. We had about 25 on the call, and I share it. Nicole from Rush West and I, we share it with on our Rush YouTube and our website. So this is stuff that players can go back and look at. I've already shared past episodes with people who wanted to know something about the school. So we really, really, really appreciate you taking the time to do this. I talked to Ben about it a little bit. We obviously all hope we're outside soon, and but this is something that we don't want to end. The coaches chat obviously fall is crazy for all of us, and I even think after the season, November into December, people are spotty. With season being long and the holidays coming up or whatever. But like in January through March or whatever, when we're all a little bit slower, for lack of a better term, we can. We'll definitely start these up again, and Nicole from Rush West talked, and she's got some people that she'd like to add. Maybe we can do 1 or 2 a week. It can be groups of 2 like this. I really like the groups of 2 because, like what you said, Q, where you're learning from each other, and it's nice to pair people up and maybe who don't know each other. And the coaching world is a big world, but it's actually a really, really small world. So so thank you for taking the time to be on here with us. We really, really appreciate it, Rush Wisconsin, and love you guys, and I'll hand over to Ben for the last of it.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. And for me, I would say just a couple of things. First off, as players, we're going off they got into the chat box and said thank you to the coaches. And I think that's a lot of why we do this is we really have such great players. You know, they've got still some things to do to be great players on the field, but they're great people and they have a desire to kind of get there. And part of that journey means rubbing shoulders with guys like you and coaches to understand and put into some context the work that they've got ahead of them. The job of our club is to try to get them as close to their ambition and aspiration as possible. So thank you for painting that picture a little bit more clearly for our people and for our coaching staff, because our singular job is to get them to where they want to get to. And you helped us today by just giving them a sense of what that path looks like that maybe is similar to what a lot of other people said, but how you said it was different. And I think that can make a difference and resonates with people. So huge thanks to the both of you. I want the players to know that a big motivation for us in talking to the coaches and learning from them, like Derek and Coach Q, is we're trying to adjust our programming to make sure we're preparing you as best as we can for good coaches like Coach Q and Derek Helmer and their programs and where they're trying to go. So the more we can match our program to what they're looking for and what college programs are looking for, the more successful you're going to be. So I hope you're taking a lot of this information in and you're thinking about it and processing it, and come back to us and come back to Coach Q and Coach Helmer. Coach Q is working in the club in the spring with a boys team. And it is my goal in 12 months to get Coach Helmer in the club as well, because that will he's back together again, right? So all of you that are on this call got to help me to kind of convince Coach Helmer and start wearing the Rush logo again. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it. The coaches are going to hang out for a little longer, but we'll ask that you guys sort of get off the Google Hangout. And if you've got questions, Matt, please forward Coach Q's and Coach emails so people can ask them directly as well.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it so much.